You are here. They are there. And there's no wall to keep them away from you.
Hi, I'm Mike Halsey, the author of several Windows 7 and Windows 8 books from Microsoft Press, O'Reilly and A-Press. And in this video, I'm going to show you how you can manage partitions on your Windows computer.
Think of this coffee table as your computer's hard disk, on which you have Windows, your programs, your files, and your pictures and your videos and other items. Now, because it's one big space, they can become mixed up and jumbled. And sometimes you want to separate them. Let's say to keep Windows and your software separate in its own little area and your files separate in their own area. So to do this, we create partitions. And this separates a single hard disk into two or more logical areas, partitions that keep everything in its own space. So to symbolize this, we'll use Goop to separate Windows and our software from our files and everything else. We now have one partition here that looks like its own hard drive and another partition here that looks like its own hard drive, and one can't interfere with the other. You don't just need two partitions either, you can separate it further if you want to. Let's say you have work files that you want to keep separate from your personal files. So we can move the personal files there, keep the work files here, and then we'll use watery goop to separate them further. So we now have three logical disks. We have our Windows and software disk, we have a separate disk for our work files, and another disk for all the personal stuff, and they're now all kept completely separate from one another.
To open the disk management console, right-click on Computer in the Start menu in Windows Vista or Windows 7 and click Manage from the options that appear. Then when the Computer Management Console opens, click Disk Manager in the left-hand column. In Windows 8, hold down the Windows key and press X on your keyboard to bring up the administration menu and click Disk Management there. Okay, so here we've got the Disk Management Console, and we can see we've got a disk here that is a big unallocated space, and we can create and manipulate partitions on this space. We do this by right-clicking on it, and various contextual options will appear. Now we haven't got anything here at the moment, so we'll create a new simple volume, and we'll work through the wizard here. Now by default, the number that appears here will fill 100% of the space that's available, so we'll do that for now because we just want one big disk. Do we want to assign a drive letter to it? We won't on this occasion, but if you want to be able to use it within Windows, then you want to assign a drive letter. And do you want to format it and give it a name? So we'll call it data, and we'll format it here. And then it asks you to confirm your settings, and it will create the partition for you. Now, once this partition's created, there's all sorts of actions that you can perform on it. You'll see here we now have our just under 1 terabyte partition. Now let's say we want to shrink this and we want to create two different partitions instead. We'll right click on it, and you'll see there's additional options here now. There's a delete volume if we wanted to delete it, there's a format option, there's a change the drive letter option, and there's a shrink volume option. So we'll select that. Now what this does is it has a look at the drive and it sees how much you can shrink it by, how much you can reduce it in size by, and it rather depends on how full the drive is, what's on it at the moment. There's nothing on there, so we have carte blanche to shrink it however we want. Now here we have the amount of space to shrink in megabytes, and we'll see the total size after shrink in megabytes as well. So let's say we want to shrink it down to roughly 50%. So we'll say we'll go squeeze it down to roughly half of its size. You'll see this is the size you're shrinking it by, in the amount of space to shrink, and underneath the total size after shrink will let you know how big it is. Certainly if you're shrinking something like a Windows drive, you want to leave probably around 200 gigabyte so that you can shrink, so that Windows itself has space to grow. So we will shrink this drive now by pressing the shrink button, and we'll see this operation's completed. We have our data drive here, and now we've got this unallocated space. So we'll create a new simple volume in this space if we want to. Alternatively, we might find that we want to increase the size of this data drive. So we can right click on it, and now we have an extend volume option that's appeared, and we can extend it, and we can say here that we want to extend it into disk 2. You'll see here it's called disk 2, and it shows the amount of available space, 468 gigabytes, and you haven't got to select all of that space. You can remove some of it, and when you're ready, press next, and the drive is back to its full size with all of its space. Once again, if you want to remove the drive completely, just select delete volume, and there it's gone.
I hope you found this video helpful. You can find much more information in my books, but for now, from me, Mike Halsey, and with the help of Goop, thank you for watching. So what are we going to do with this? We store these in the cloud, not on a hard drive.
Don't do that in the phone. Don't show the phone.